Hello everybody and welcome back to LRN. Today we are previewing the Canadian Grand Prix ahead of Sunday with lights out at 7 p.m. BST. So really excited about this weekend and another fascinating race ahead as this season continues to throw curveballs. Have to say last weekend was a bit more predictable. I did predict a win and a 1-2 for Red Bull, and it did happen. Obviously that was helped by the fact that Ferrari didn't finish, but I do feel that would have happened regardless, with if had Ferrari finished, would have come home in third and fourth respectively. But certainly a good race again. I think now with that win, Verstappen holds a 21-point lead over his teammate Sergio Perez. And if you consider the favoritism of Red Bull towards Verstappen, you have to assume that it's like an additional advantage. Not only is he 21 points ahead, the person closest to him is his teammate, who Red Bull could very easily decide they want to keep in second place in that title fight, unless something goes really wrong for Verstappen and Perez just keeps picking up those points to give Red Bull no choice but to allow him a fair fight. I think that, certainly soon, if not already, they'll start to push things towards Verstappen's favour with pit stop strategies, tyre strategies, things of that nature, and asking Perez to defend for him in future races when needed against the Ferraris, as they do appear to be the only legitimate challengers to Red Bull as things stand. But for Leclerc to already be 31 points behind Verstappen, it does mean that even if Leclerc won and Verstappen was to DNF, he'd still have a 6-point lead. So it is a difficult place for Leclerc to be, especially when the Red Bulls are looking pretty bulletproof as things stand at the moment this season. Now, that can obviously change. We saw them have issues at the beginning of the season. I do feel they've got them under wraps, but with the budget cuts, with this all being very new in the regulations this season, don't count out the fact that Red Bull could still have reliability issues later in the season, and that could help to spice things up, assuming Ferrari can get their affairs in order and stop having issues with their engines, which I know their customers would be very happy about as well. Looking at Haas, Alfa Romeo, if Ferrari can sort out their engines, it will help them as well in their fight in the championship table. So hopefully Ferrari can get it together. Maybe a couple of DNFs here and there for Red Bull over the next few races. But looking at this weekend, in terms of initial predictions, I'm actually going to predict that Leclerc is going to get a win this weekend. I think Ferrari will come back with a vengeance. I don't expect them to have immediate reliability issues again. They're obviously going to put new parts on the car. Should be a fresh engine in both cars, so that should definitely last the race. Certainly, I think more chance of a DNF, assuming no crashes happen for the Red Bull, so that'll be interesting. But assuming everyone gets to the finish, I'm going to go for a Leclerc win, followed by Verstappen and Perez, followed by Sainz. So we'll see how that plays out this weekend. It's definitely dependent on Ferrari getting their strategies right. We know how bad they've been recently, but I'm going to go for the Leclerc win. Hopefully it comes through. Let's see. But I just want to see this title go to the end. We've already got a Constructors' Championship deficit of 81 points from Ferrari to Red Bull, and that is huge. Especially when Perez is in such good form as well. Obviously, he had his issues at Baku, but still coming home second. It's so hard to see Ferrari bridging an 81-point gap to Red Bull unless they do start having reliability issues. So Ferrari desperately need to put a marker down and say, we are still in this fight. Or mentally, it could start becoming an issue for the team and the drivers at Ferrari, and easier for the Red Bull team to sort of manage their performance through the season, where they can sort of pick and choose what they do, and they don't have to be too aggressive with strategies and decisions in race. So really important for Ferrari that they just get that 81-point gap down starting this weekend. Otherwise, the mental game is going to become an issue. And we've already seen Ferrari start to falter, even when the pressure isn't really on them. So, yeah, really vital that they go and sort that out. But that's the standings for this weekend. So, going to be a really interesting one. But I think the key thing to look out for this weekend, away from the title fight, is, of course, after last weekend, the porpoising and the bouncing issues. So you may not all be aware of the differences between porpoising and bouncing, and it's the bouncing that was causing the pain and aggravation for the drivers. Obviously, we saw the pain that Hamilton was in, but it's mentioned by all the drivers down the grid now. But it was bouncing, not porpoising, and that's from from Mercedes chief strategist James Vowles. So he has come out and tried to explain the difference between the two, and essentially explained that porpoising was masking the bouncing problem, because of how bad the porpoising issue was for Mercedes. So what he has had to say is that what is happening now is that the car is lower as a result of fixing the first issue, porpoising, but now hitting the deck quite hard, and that's creating the bouncing that you see at the moment. Now, this was exacerbated by the fact that they were in Baku. So what's also clear is that the good old-fashioned racetracks, that the tracks that are racetracks all year round, not the street circuits like we've got in Baku and Monaco. So like Canada this weekend, we're going to have a proper racetrack, and what that should mean is a smoother surface and one that allows the cars to run a lot cleaner over it, which prevents the bouncing. The porpoising, if you imagine it, it's a bit more like it's got an air cushion, so they're coming up and down, but the car isn't whacking against the floor. What was happening in Baku is where the actual ground was, so rough, where it's a real street circuit, the car was hitting the ground when it was porpoising, so it was bouncing off the surface, which was causing the impacts to their backs and causing the additional pain and aggravation that the drivers were suffering from. So we expect the issues to continue in terms of porpoising, but the bouncing will be track dependent. So the tracks that you see the drivers complain most at will be street circuits. So look out for that as the season progresses. Of course, they are still calling for the FIA to change potentially the regulations, but we already know that not everyone's going to agree. Apparently, most of the drivers agree. Toto Wolff came out and said that the only driver against a change of regulation to help with the bouncing porpoising issues was Fernando Alonso. So clearly he doesn't mind it at the moment. Maybe he feels that it would really hit Alpine's performance if any changes were to come in. Maybe that's why. But in terms of the teams, we know that Christian Horner is against it. He's made it quite clear that he is, because he feels that other teams could simply make setup changes to alleviate these issues, and they're refusing because of the performance hits that they would have, which from Christian Horner's point of view, and Martin Brundle's come out in agreement with him, is that it's up to the teams to make that decision. If they have a realistic option to prevent their cars from causing damage to their drivers and they're not taking it, that is their decision. So it's not necessarily a issue the FIA need to sort when there's a ready-made solution there for the teams already. And I do get that. Obviously, the issue as a fan is I want to see close racing. I want to see all these teams challenging and more teams fighting at the front. So if we don't change anything, obviously Red Bull are going to continue to be out in front, hopefully with Ferrari as well. But if we did change it, it might actually bring the teams closer together, potentially with Mercedes being brought back forward to the fight with Ferrari and Red Bull. And we just want to see more teams fighting and better racing each weekend. So difficult one to call. I don't suspect there's going to be any immediate changes, especially with proper circuits coming out where it shouldn't be as much of an issue. But let's keep an eye on that and see how things play out. But I thought key to point out the difference between the bouncing and the porpoising. So the porpoising not causing that much pain. The bouncing is where they're whacking the floor while porpoising, and that's causing more aggravation and an actual injury to the back as they're driving. So just thought I'd call the difference out to that. I think the other thing to look out this weekend is the fight between Alpine and McLaren. So also Alfa Romeo sort of sitting there in the background, but I don't think they're quite ready to fight properly. But the Alpines are looking strong right now, and they currently have 18-point deficit to McLaren. So McLaren sat on 65 constructors points and Alpine on 47. Now that is of course with Danny Rick not having a great season. A lot of those points on Norris. So you do think if Ricciardo was actually performing at the level Norris was, they'd be way up ahead of Alpine, but unfortunately they're not. And I think with Alpine coming back, and again, it's track dependent, it seems to be McLaren are really good at some circuits, terrible at others. Alpine obviously having similar struggles this season, but a really, really interesting midfield battle that potentially could play out over the rest of the season. Definitely something to look out for in Drive to Survive if that is the case, because we know that they're looking for these storylines as things are. So we kind of can already see what they're going to be with the fights at the back, the fights in the middle, and the fights at the front. They're going to definitely have a storyline between Norris and Ricciardo. I think the Alonso will be in there as well, given that he's now got the longest career in F1. And certainly we'll see a lot about the fight at the front, the issues between, oh, they're definitely going to put in a story about Russell and Hamilton, and that'll be largely made up, but it'll be good drama about how the young kids come in and beating the old hand. So I mean, hopefully Hamilton can, you know, start to make changes on that, and they can start to fight more closely through the rest of the year. But you can definitely expect to see some of that played out on Drive to Survive next year. But anyway, so really interesting midfield battle there for 4th and 5th place in the championship behind the front 3 teams. Obviously with Mercedes out on their own in 3rd, not really challenging ahead, but not really being challenged from behind. So keep an eye out for that fight. Can't always be about what's happening at the front. Really key positions, especially with budgets and you know what's going on. And for those looking forward to F1 Manager, maybe looking forward to those midfield battles, and or maybe challenging from the back and progressing through the grid. It's a really interesting to focus on when you look at those midfield battles, and it tends to be a lot closer and a lot more exciting as well. It just doesn't get as much TV coverage, but some of the best overtakes and the best fighting are happening in that midfield, and it'd be great to see more of it through the rest of the year. But certainly I hope that McLaren and Alpine can have a really good championship fight. I don't see them challenging the front 3 this season, so they may as well be stuck together and fighting and toing and froing through each race as we go through. But keep an eye out for this weekend at Canada. Let's see who wins on that one. Obviously they've got long straights in Canada, and McLaren weren't great on the straights in Baku. Maybe they can sort those issues and come into Canada a bit stronger, but they did actually have good race pace, so I expect a strong performance from both. Again, fighting at the, sort of the back of the top 10, assuming there's no DNFs, fighting for those last points, but it'll be a really good race. And finally, we have the latest news to come out of F1, and that is that Melbourne has been confirmed as staying on the F1 calendar until 2035, and that's in addition to F2 and F3 races at Melbourne as well. So they actually were being challenged by, I assume, a street circuit in Sydney for the rights to have the race in Australia, and they have been given that new contract. The fact that they're an established F1 Grand Prix has gone in their favour, so it is absolutely the deciding body, the FIA, have decided that Melbourne was the right place to stay. I agree. I think Melbourne's a fantastic thing on the calendar. Growing up, absolutely, you always look forward to Melbourne. It was always the first race of the season. I know that isn't the case now, but it's always one I've looked forward to. I think it's a staple of the calendar. Really always the race that got me in the mood for the season, because it was always, you just knew it as the first race, and I'd be really sad to see it go. So yeah, really happy with Melbourne, especially with the changes to the track. I know it, you know, didn't necessarily have huge impact on the quality of racing this year. I think the new cars did, but whether or not that, you know, we see that progress over the next few seasons will be really good to see. But to have Melbourne confirmed as on the calendar until 2035, really happy about that, and I'll be looking forward to those races over the next few seasons as we progress. But that's it for today, guys. That's my preview for the Canada GP. I'll be back again on Sunday with my review of the weekend and the Grand Prix itself. So make sure you're tuned into the Grand Prix. Let me know in the comments below what you're most looking forward to this weekend. Any particular battles that you're looking forward to I haven't called out. Any big predictions that, you know, maybe in the midfield or the back. Any surprises? Who do you think is going to be the big surprise package of the weekend? Maybe your who's going to be driver of the day? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. But otherwise, if you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out, and hit a like on the video. And I'm going to thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. Goodbye.